Welcome to today's Global Connections program. I'm Bill Miller. Today we're going to take a look at a couple of organizations and programs that are really making a difference in this world and are helping to create a better world by focusing attention on poverty, the elimination of poverty, on climate change, and a variety of other issues. My guest today is an expert on these programs and on these issues. Patrick Sciarratta is the program director of the World Development Foundation. Mr. Sciarratta is also the president of the Vinculum Foundation. Patrick Sciarratta, welcome to today's Global Connections program.
Bill, once again, it's great to see you. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you being back. You've got so much going on. We could probably do this at least every 6 months or every year. It's been, what, 4 or 5 years now?
It
or something
been.
Like that.
It's great seeing you.
Good to see you. I appreciate you being on. Let's talk about the World Development Foundation. What is that? When was it formed? Why was it formed? What is its main mission?
Sure. Since 2015, I've been actively working as the program director for the World Development Foundation. It was created, in essence, to assist staff, member nations, NGOs in creating a larger basis of success for the Sustainable Development Goals. So we have created programming here at United Nations headquarters with staff, with NGOs, to create our own vision of how we might be helpful. In most cases, we're very interested in public-private partnerships. I would say that in terms of the SDGs, we look predominantly, as well as all of them we want to support, number 16 and 17. We believe that public-private partnerships are very important, but often the private corporations take over. They have a stronger base than most of our civil society and even UN friends are able to muster. So we want to use the idea of SDG 16, making the institution strong, so that number 17, partnerships, can be done eye to eye without us feeling that we will be intimidated or that someone else will take over that process. So we've been looking at how to make that possible so that we can make the UN stronger and make the SDGs more successful. We've worked in country. We've been invited by countries like Dominica, for example, to assist in country. We've worked in one of their areas, Castle Bruce, to help their fishermen fish better and improve their situation with better boats and equipment. And then after the devastating hurricanes of about a year or so ago, 2 years ago now, we went in to actually assist the country in reformulating its ideas so that it continue to be resistant to future hurricanes. And our founder, Dr. William Guo, who you have interviewed, was made a special envoy by the president of Dominica and the permanent representative here to take the lead in the assistance that was needed after the hurricane devastated nearly that entire small country. We're talking about Dominica, not the Dominican Republic, right. And it was really devastating. As you know, because you know Ambassador Henry McDonald, who retired from the permanent mission of Suriname.
He's also been on the program.
Yes, when he retired, and I was his assistant, special assistant, we both retired from work at the mission, and Henry McDonald became the president of World Development Foundation, and I became its program director, initiating and in most cases managing and administering our projects both here and abroad. So we joined Dr. William Guo, our founder, and our general manager, Christina Fan, to work with our team here and abroad to see what we could do to be of assistance in these areas.
Well, this is very commendable, and it's very good that you're focusing on the Sustainable Development Goals. And of course, we think back, flashback, they came online in 2015. Well, they were adopted in September of 2015 by the 193 countries at the United Nations. 17 logical, practical, quantifiable goals to eliminate poverty, to eliminate hunger, to empower women, to preserve the oceans. Just 17 great goals that almost everybody in the world is in agreement with. And of course, we see that faith-based groups are supporting them. Service clubs like Rotary International, Lions International, labor unions are doing it, business communities, the private sector, and it's really commendable that you're
because they're
on
able
this.
to.
That's
you
right.
know, I think differently than the MDGs,
yes.
which were, these are the things you need to do to make the world better. It's very difficult to follow those. These are not the UN's SDGs.
Right.
I think the UN made it clear that these are the world's SDGs, and they're a kind of roadmap that you can find your own way through. And I think they're very enlightened, and we're very proud to be a small
Sure.
part of
Well, and
helping their success.
There's something in there for everybody.
There really
Well,
is.
very good. Very commendable to do that. Let's talk briefly about the Vinculum Foundation. Vinculum, as I recall, that's a mathematical term. What exactly does that mean?
Very few people know that. The vinculum is the line in a fraction. So there's the numerator and the denominator, and the vinculum is the line that unites them. So it's always been my interest to bring together great funders with great NGO programs, and to bring them together in support of the United Nations has been one of my dreams since I became involved as a volunteer and later worked at the missions of Sao Tome and Principe, and then in Suriname. And now back again working with the NGO civil society community, it's apparent that that's one of our greatest needs on all levels, is to attract donors and then to use those funds for projects here, so that civil society really would like to amplify its own voice in support of the SDGs. And it's a kind of ancillary to the World Development Foundation. The more and more we work on these projects, the more we need a kind of re-granting agency that is focused on taking in funds from donors interested in our goals and mission here, and then re-granting those out to the organizations that could use them here.
Exactly. That was a good entree right into the UN Civil Society Conference that you held in August 2019 in Salt Lake City. You were elected to the board, the executive committee. You're also the media co-chair, is that correct?
I was the media co-chair, but it was such an interesting transitional period. When I came here in the beginning to do volunteer work in 2001, they were called the NGO DPI Conference. And the NGOs, non-government department, a lot of word soup there, acronyms,
soup,
yes,
right.
alphabet soup. And then somehow it changed to the DPI NGO Conference as DPI, the Department of Public Information, took a larger and larger role. So last year there was a real transition, and that DPI no longer existed. It became the Department of Global Communications. I love this title. I love the work that Maher Nasser, who leads it, Jeff Brez, Hawa Diallo, Felipe Cuepo, Victoria, Crystal, all those great youth who are working on these programs, have morphed something that was very top-down, the Department of Public Information, into a Department of Global Communications. So there was that major transition. No longer called the NGO or DPI NGO Conference, it's now the Civil Society Conference. In the past, we would register about 1,000 to 1,500 people. And due to visa issues, we maybe get fewer actual people in the hall. For this conference, which was, again, a new idea, the first conference ever for the United Nations in the United States outside of headquarters and outside of New York, in Salt Lake City, we had 4,000 actual delegates.
That was quite a bump.
And these were actual delegates, not folks who had just registered and didn't come. So it was really wonderful. And I think because it was more in the heartland and the west of the United States, it brought in many delegates who would never have come to this and saw this as a real opportunity to learn about the UN. And thankfully, the theme of the program was very supportive. It was sustainable communities, sustainable cities, and inclusionary communities. And the folks who were running it, our chair, the folks who I mentioned in the department, were very keen on the idea to bring in issues that are very timely: climate change and the climate crisis, youth and youth development, how we bring in more sustainable, how we make more sustainable cities by including more people. Aside from being media chair, which I found was quite an easy job, it was a very interesting, exciting program that brought in so many people. The World Development Foundation also did a workshop on inclusionary societies in building more sustainable communities. And we actually looked at the sustainable communities we wanted to support in the United Nations. How does the NGO community come more together so that we're not the DPI, DGC, whatever, NGOs and the ECOSOC NGOs? How do we bring them all together? How do we find more inclusion in the societies we work in so that we can be beneficial to the sustainable cities and inclusionary societies we hope to promote around the world? And then that was a very successful workshop for us within this conference. And then we brought everyone to dinner. We had about 150 people at a dinner that then enabled them to go further and talk about how do we work together. And we were very proud to bring Troy Wolf and his folks from the United Nations Foundation and the United Nations Association, as many United Nations Association chapters from the United States came en masse. And that gave us the opportunity to speak with UNA and UN Foundation officials about the very same themes. How do we collaborate to strengthen the message that we all wish to share?
And the cities are absolutely critical. Sustainable cities are the linchpin of the future development of the world, really, especially as we deal with climate change, because I think by 2050, 75% of all the people in the world are going to be living in large cities. And of course, if the city is dysfunctional, if the city is non-sustainable, if it's wasting energy, that type of thing, doesn't have mass transit, that it's a recipe for disaster, and it's going to exacerbate the climate change problem we have today. So it's a very, very timely topic. Now, there's a lot of information shared during the conference. Do you have any recommendations? Did any come out? How will that information be shared with other groups, with other non-governmental organizations? I think there are 1,500 registered with the Department for Global Communications at the United Nations. But how do you get that information out?
Well, we created what was called an outcome document. I'm really not sure if that was the proper term, because we started working on it before the conference. But I think we knew where we wanted to go, but I still wonder if that's the proper title. But it was a tremendously well-written, well-accessed document that spoke about what occurred during the conference and delineated what we had hoped to achieve and where we think we go from here. Beyond that, there was a young woman, Annie Dang, who is now on this executive committee as well, a youth, who helped facilitate the writing of the youth declaration. So we had all the youth come together and write their own declaration that was an ancillary, additional document that went beyond the general outcome document and spoke to the youth about what we thought they should be saying was their responsibility and their opportunities and their challenges. Certainly, as you and I would agree, the Sustainable Development Goals and the future we seek at the United Nations is for the youth. It's really, it's you know, it will benefit, but it's not for us. We're the present. And there was some dynamic, youthful people there from across the globe. I think there were some 80 or 90 countries or even more who were in attendance, even though they were in smaller numbers than the larger group that was from the United States who were there. But those two documents have already gone out to our constituents. You mentioned the 1,500 who are known to be our formal associates, but I have 4,000 subscribers to the NGO Reporter, and we sent it out through the Reporter to all of those who would be interested.
Sounds like a great program.
It was fun. It was good.
I'm sure it was. Well, you're watching Global Connections Television, which is a privately funded, independently produced program. The opinions expressed on Global Connections are solely those of the moderator and his guest. We'd invite our viewers to go to our website at www.globalconnectionstelevision.com to view previous programs. Also, if you're involved with the PBS or community access television station, or perhaps an educational institution that has an intra-campus television hookup, or you just have a computer, you have a website, you like our shows and would like to share them, please feel free to do so. Global Connections Television is provided at no cost as a public service to help us better understand international issues and how they impact our lives. Today we're talking with the president of the Vinculum Foundation, Patrick Sciarratta, and he's also the president of several other things we've been talking about. We'll get into in just a moment about a wide range of programs to focus on the UN Sustainable Development Goals to eliminate poverty, to eliminate hunger, to empower women, to preserve the planet Earth, and many others. Patrick Sciarratta, what do you do in your spare time?
Well,
that's my question.
Try to have fun. You know, I mentioned that the conference was fun, and that's really minimizing it. But it's an important point. This was a serious, important conference in Salt Lake City. But what was fun was that no matter when we meet, the United Nations permits civil society, enables, I should say, civil society from around the world to get together. And that collaboration, cooperation, the exchange of great ideas is almost as important as the plenaries, the roundtables, the workshops that are actually in the conference. So the conference was extremely meaningful, very serious, and a great opportunity. But the meeting of all these folks, the meeting of our chapter friends from UNA, our civil society friends from around the world, and their interaction with the UN folks who were there was a lot of fun because it gave us the opportunity to share critical information that we don't often get to do when we're not face to face but online, etc. This is my life. I really enjoy tremendously.
Life. It sounds
a lot of fun.
And years ago, when the UN was formed, it was basically, the UN basically consists of governments. Governments are members, 193 governments. Basically every country in the world is a member of the United Nations. And it's often been said that the UN is successful only when the member states participate and actually get involved in dealing with these problems. And that's very true. The UN can provide the structure, they can provide a lot of technical assistance,
True.
but today they're taking that one step further and saying now with civil society, with the non-governmental organizations like Alliance International, Rotary International, faith-based groups, that strengthens the organization and it mobilizes resources to deal with these problems. And we have to work on these together. The private sector has to come into them, and the UN can't do it by itself, but not any of these other sectors on an individual basis can do it. Well, it sounds like a great program, and we look forward to hearing about the one next year. Before we run out of time, though, let me move to another topic here. You've been involved in a summer tour with UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, talking about a particular book. What was that about?
This book came out, and I think this would be of interest to you and to your viewers. It's a book that I guess came out almost a year ago now, called Journalism, Fake News, and Disinformation, to get the order straight. But interestingly, when you see the book, and it's free online, you can go to UNESCOs.org and UNESCO docs. UNESDOCS.org, and you can find the book there and you can download it for free. What you'll see in the title is that the word fake news is crossed out, because the book contends, and I totally agree, that it's not a question of fake news, it's a question of media literacy. Mm-hmm. The news is not per se fake, that's too broad a term. Mm-hmm. The news that we don't like or shouldn't have is either incorrect because someone made a mistake, we'll call that misinformation, humans make mistakes, but more importantly, it could be disinformation, which are lies that are purported by people who want to fool you, or malinformation. So let's say you're running for a position and they say, oh, well, do you know that he's gay? Something that would have no relationship to what you were doing, but would try to poison the well against you. And then there are many subsets where people gaslight. We hear presidents of certain countries say this. People say, a lot of people think, and you're led to be confused. Is that true? Do a lot of people think that? There's astroturfing, where someone says, I belong to the Freedom of Choice committee, and you think, wow, a lot of people got together, and you find out it's really owned by soda companies who want you to buy big bottles of soda as opposed to small bottles of soda. And so they're astroturf, which is a word that means fake grass. So it's not the real lawn, but it's a fake grass. So these are fake community groups. And there are many other terms that fit into this rubric. So it's not about stopping fake news, which we'll never be able to do. Something comes over the internet, how do you stop that? But how do we become more media literate so we can see that something is a lie, or someone is trying to poison the well, or someone has just made a mistake? And I think that the book is wonderful for anyone involved in media, anyone, and that's virtually all of us, or students or teachers, because there are assignments, there are links involved. And I was fortunate enough to be invited to speak about the book at the World Assembly of Youth, which is in Malaysia. It's one of the oldest ECOSOC associated groups in the world. The Economic and Social Council, right. And related to the UN. And there I spoke to many journalism students, youth. And then from there, the Media Education Center invited me to speak at the EU's City of Youth. The 2019 European Union City of Youth was in Novi Sad, Serbia. So I flew from, actually I was in Thailand and then Malaysia and Singapore at a number of programs, but the World Assembly of Youth was the capper there, and then flew over to Eastern Europe and spoke there, and then I went to Budapest and Poland afterwards. But the European City of Youth was, it's a great experience, and the Media Education Center, which is resident in Belgrade, was the host for that. And I've had a number of other opportunities in Westchester, New York. I've spoken at the International Year of the Girl program on the same topic.
Right. And that's, first off, your frequent flyer miles went up, but also your jet lag went up along with that as you moved around to several areas of the world. But as I was thinking about this, we who've been involved in the media, and if you've been around for 15, 20, 30 years, we have never, in my opinion anyway, seen so much misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. And you're right, the consumer, everybody who reads, everybody who tries to learn about issues, to discuss them in an educated way, we have to become discerning consumers. We have to learn about what's going on, because a large part of this stuff is just absolutely incorrect. It's
but Bill,
totally
we have
incorrect.
to learn also about what's going on in us, because often we read something that we want to believe.
Exactly.
We want to think that he or she is terrible, and then we read something completely off the wall that confirms it, and so we believe that. And we've got to maybe get out of our tribal thinking or become more media literate to say, well, whether I wanted to believe this or not, there was something that said some world leader had an actual IQ of under 74, and everyone was publishing that until a doctor said, with an IQ of 74, you wouldn't be able to stand.
They would water you twice a day.
So you need to look inside yourself to be more open to accepting truths. I don't know what happened. When we were younger, I thought the news was really about trying to find out information that we didn't have before.
Where it's supposed to be.
And now the news has become a religion that needs to confirm our tribal beliefs, or else we will not accept it. And that media illiteracy leads us down the path of accepting those bad news informations as fake news.
Right. Now, before we leave that topic, did I understand you before you said it's UNESCO Docs, or UNESCO.org?
Sitting here, no, I can't say.
Docs?
UNESCO has a DOC ending. If you go to UNESCO.org, you will find it. They have a document area. Click on that and just try to remember the title. And from that, you'll be able to be led on the UNESCO site to the book.
And the title is Journalism, Fake News, and Disinformation.
Yes.
So they can go there, right?
Great.
Well, before we run out of time, we still have a lot of topics to get to here very quickly. You mentioned the United Nations Association. This is one of the largest nonpartisan foreign policy associations in the United States. They have right now about 175, 200 chapters around the country, over 30,000 members. I have been a president of chapters over the years. I was national chair years ago, full disclosure.
Wow.
But what are you doing with the United Nations Association, and what are they trying to do to help us become better consumers of objective information?
Well, as you mentioned earlier, I was elected to the board of directors here of the NGO Executive Committee.
Right.
I also took on the role of a director at UNA Westchester, and that is because in one part it was really created there. Eleanor Roosevelt's first chapter of UNA was in Westchester, New York, because that's where she was living, and we have tried to continue a very proud future for that organization. We do a lot of large projects, as we have the support of the county executive and many of the large corporations that are there, PepsiCo, MasterCard, and others. And so we are doing a number of public-private partnership conferences. We're doing a lot with youth, a program called Rock Your World, which enables youth to look at the Human Rights Declaration and have responses to it that are creative, and our high school and early college students are really taking advantage of that, and many other programs. I mean, we could certainly talk for another hour.
There's so many out there, right? We'll have to get to them a little bit later, though, because we're running out of time. In fact, we're just about out of time. But this is so critical. All the issues you've been talking about are very important, and we would encourage all of our viewers to learn more about them. And they can go to a variety of sources, UN.org, to get information. They go to UNAUSA.org. We can, again, become discerning members of the society who are really trying to learn more about what's going on in our country and around the world, because these issues do impact our lives. Climate change, human trafficking, war and peace, just on across the board. But Patrick Sciarratta, I want to thank you so very much.
So great seeing you again.
For a very interesting and a very informative program.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm Bill Miller. Thank you for joining us today on Global Connections program.